Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's Journal for All Seasons, journaling for self-care. This is my double page spread that's facing me this week. So on this side I've got that artist's canvassy stuff that I talked about last week, not loving. And on this side I've got a lovely eco print. So I don't really want to cover up the whole of my lovely eco print. It's a bit torn down here so it needs a mend. But I do want to cover this up. And I've been thinking about weaving because when I did the flip through of my granny's journal last Park Home Life on Valentine's Day, which is to me my granny's birthday, I shared with you that my granny had been a warper in the mills in Bradford when she was a young woman first married. And I've done weaving, we did weaving in different ways in the Slow Stitch project last year. And I think even in a Wonky Wednesday we did weave cloth and paper. But I thought for this page I would like to weave paper. Now rather than just doing it as an art project, obviously I wanted to inject an element of self-care, and as I mentioned last week I've been rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves, the Clarissa Pinkola Estes book, and that's all based around fairy stories and the reframing of fairy stories. And so I started thinking about cloaks or capes, which feature a lot in mythology, fairy stories, even to this day, think Harry Potter and his invisibility cape, or in Lord of the Rings, that's not this day, that was written a long time ago, but obviously the films were relatively recent, the elven cloaks that camouflage the hobbits and their party from attack. But you'll find throughout fairy tales and mythology that cloaks have magical properties of protection, of making you invisible, of camouflaging you. And of course there's the superhero's cape, which is a variation on the theme. So I thought, let's weave ourselves a paper cloak of protection. So that's my thinking. And what I've done is I've used this paper. I've got a blank sheet here just to show you. This is just cheap sketchbook paper that I've tea dyed, and I know from having done it I think last week that it goes through my printer okay. So what I've done is on one sheet of that, on this sheet, I'm not going to read it all out to you, don't panic. If you want to pause the screen and read it, then feel free. It's, I'm putting it here on the internet, so I'm quite happy for you to read it if you're interested. But basically what I've done is I've written down, and this didn't come easy I have to say, qualities that I have. It's sort of like writing a love letter to yourself, if you will. And that doesn't come easy, I know, to many of us, to big ourselves up, to highlight our good qualities. But I've tried to be honest and write down things that I know I'm good at, and then I've added to that a positive element that brings to my life. So for an example, the last one, I love music and can sing and dance, which brings joy as it allows me to express myself with my voice and my body. And then I wrote it out in rough, and then I've copied it up onto this piece of tea-dyed paper. So that's very much your inner resources, your inner strengths. And then the other page is the sort of the outer, I don't like to use the word resources in that sense, I don't know, it feels a little bit reductive. Your network, even that, your community, your environment, all the external things that give you strength and positivity. So I've started with, I have a comfortable home which gives me security, and there's things like I have precious possessions which hold the memories of loved ones and of happy times past. This allows me to feel a connection to my life so far lived and reminds me that I've been blessed with joyful moments. So it's kind of gratitude journaling in a way, but I've divided it into our inner strengths and the outer strengths that surround us, and if you weave those two together, that's our cloak of protection. That's the tools that give us the strength and the courage to go forward through our lives, whatever life's journey offers us. So that's the thinking behind it. Now I'm going to tear these up and weave them. so that the words are going to get jumbled up and overlay each other and so on, and something, we'll see, you know, some things will still be able to be read, some not. If you wanted to do this and do the weaving and further hide it, you can always then of course paint over it or gesso over it or something. I'll see, I don't know yet. I'm just going to start with the weaving. So first I'm going to do the weaving on this ugly page, ugly to me page, poor page, I'm sorry page, don't mean to hurt your feelings. So I'm going to move that to one side. Oh, sorry for the clangy ruler, which I do need. I'm going to make sure that I haven't moved it where you can't see. Once bitten, or several times bitten, finally shy. So I've handwritten myself, you know, my inner, because that feels more personal. The handwriting, that's literally personal when it's within the person. And I've typed the external. There's something kind of symbolic in that, I guess, but also for the aesthetics I just thought it would look interesting. Sorry, mind of an artist, can't get away from it. So I want this to sort of sit in the middle of the page, and I've had a bit of a measure and a play, and I'm going to tear out this text section. Just, you see it's printed on, even my printer's wonky, look at that. So I'm just going to line up on the words, basically. I'm trying not to get too precious about it, but just, you know, so the words end up straight. Because I don't care if it doesn't cover the whole page, then we'll do something else. But I do want both pieces to end up somewhat the same size, you know, within the bounds of, we'll see. As per usual, I'm kind of making this up as I go along. But you see, I've got a cutting mat, so I'm going to line it up. I don't want to really cut my words off. So I hope that you know, I mean, if you don't want to do the writing part, if that feels too much, too you know, deep, then just do the weaving. You don't, the writing's just adding another layer, really, I think. Or think of another, if you don't like, you know, the idea of the inner and the outer, you could write something else. You could maybe just write two pieces of writing that speak to you, poetry, or, you know, or something else. I'm just giving you ideas. So now I've torn this out. I had the feeling this was the smaller of the two. It more or less covers it. Oh, that's okay. So I'm just going to tear this out as well. They, by pure chance, more by luck than judgment, they seem to have ended up roughly the same size. This one, because I'm going to make this the warp, so the strips are going to run this way, I'm not going to tear the top off yet, because I think that will help me when I come to do the actual weaving, to anchor it, and then I can cut it off at the end. So I'm going to leave the top of the page intact for now. Forward thinking. Sometimes I amaze myself. But I must say, this part in particular, you know, telling myself how good I am. I sat there looking at the empty page for a long time. I think I nearly finished my tea, my cup of tea, before I actually got round to writing the first thing. But once I started, it got easier, and it maybe helps to imagine how that you're writing about yourself as if you're a friend. I've talked before about something a friend of mine said to me. I've now got that off centre. Do I mind? Not really. I'm just going to come in a bit. I'm just going to... Really, the writing is now done, so it's going to be not lost, but obscured. So I'm going to tear this first into vertical strips, and you could even mix up the order if you really wanted to make it, you know, unrecognisable. I think I'm not going to mix up the order. I don't know. Who knows what I'm going to do? We'll find out, won't we? I'm going to try to not mix up the order, but if the order gets mixed up, I'm going to not worry. If you really were bothered about not mixing up the order, I would suggest numbering your strips in case there's a gust of wind or, you know, a cat walking past. He's asleep at the moment just over there in his basket. But you never know. I suppose they're vaguely the same size, but you see I'm not measuring or anything. I will say though that a little quirk of mine if I'm doing weaving is to have an odd number so that it's symmetrical, you know, because you weave under, over. So if you've got an odd number, you know, your unders and overs are the same. So I've now got 3. So if I sort of do this somewhere in half, this last bit, but you know, you do you. That might not bother you. It's just a quirk that I know I have. I don't mind that they're different lengths and different widths as long as there's an odd number of them. So that one, see, that one's much wider, but I don't mind. And this last one. All this tearing, I'll be getting applause all over the place. If you didn't hear when I said that, one lady told me that when that she watches with captions, and when I tear paper, the caption says applause. So yeah, so that was a lot of applause. I'm not going to tear this one yet, I don't think. I think I might stick those down first. Find the page again. Whoops. So, I think I'm going to use a bit of masking tape that I can then get off. Sound of drawer opening and closing. I'm going to lay these on, and bearing in mind I'm going to trim some of this plainness, so I'll kind of centre it as if that plain bit wasn't there, if that makes sense. So I'll just lay them on to get the width. You can be as finicky as you like. There we go. And I do want them to be kind of butted up against each other, although again that's up to you if you want to really bother. So that looks to me more or less even, maybe slightly that way. So I'm just going to get a little bit of masking tape, or a strip more or less. I wonder if that says applause as well, tearing masking tape. Like that. And I'm going to pull it towards me so I don't get my head in too much, and I'm just going to try and stick them down a bit higher, I think. Maybe if I line them up to the top of the page, that's the best way to satisfy my need for getting them somewhat straight. And the masking tape I'll take off at the end when I cut the strips away, and I did have another idea for around the edge. I think I'll get those stuck down first. These papers have gone a bit bendy. Excuse my head if it comes in. It doesn't, you know, I'm not pressing it down hard either, just in case it, actually it doesn't matter if it doesn't come off, does it, if I'm cutting the ends off the paper. I'm just doing my best. Just do your best, that's all you can do. Right, that needed to be slightly longer. I'll just put another bit on the end. There we go. So that's my warp, if you like. So now I need to get this piece and I need to tear it the other way. So I'll just do that same thing again. Whoopsie. Now here the temptation, of course, is to tear between the lines. Or maybe I'll just tear deliberately through the lines, but you can obviously choose what you do. Whoops, and I tore that one. Not good at the end there. What you could do is mend it if you wanted to. A bit of masking tape on the back, why not? We're all for mending here, aren't we? You could put masking tape on the front if you really wanted to do visible mending, but I think in this case I will put it on the back. There we go. And I'm just going to be a bit more careful from now on, and I'm just going to tear this into strips and try and keep them in order. I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, so I've torn on my other bits, so now I'm going to start at the top, and I made sure I got an odd number by doing the same trick, and I'm going to weave them under, over, under, over. I'm sure you'll know how to weave. Under, over. And then I'm going to glue them. I think I'll just glue them to themselves, and then when I've got the whole piece done, I can then glue the whole thing down, because I'm not sure glue stick will work on this canvasy stuff. I've got a new little Pritt stick. So I'm just going to put a dab of glue on each end. I don't think it's, maybe I'll do the first end of the vertical ones as well, but I don't think it's necessary to do every junction everywhere, if that makes sense. Sometimes tea-dyed paper doesn't like coffee. Sometimes tea-dyed paper doesn't like Pritt stick either. If it doesn't, then we'll have to get the medium out. So I want to do all of these. And I haven't done the under ones, and now I can't, but never mind. As long as it all holds together. Is it going to work with the Pritt stick? It's not Pritt stick, it's you here. No, I think I might have to get the matte medium out. I'll have to put my thing under so I don't get a gluey mat, so I'll edit all that out. I'll be back in a minute with the matte medium. Okay, I'm back with my matte medium and my bit of brown paper down. So I've matte medium that one just to check that it does work and it's fine. So I've stacked these up. I need to turn them that way. And so now this one, and if you really want to mix them up, you could put them upside down, or you can do whatever you want. I'm just doing what I want, what I feel like doing. So this one has to go under there, the opposite to where the other one started, and then over that one. Stella's now playing with her ball, that's the sound you can hear. For every other one basically, just flip it up. And then on this, and then I'm going to just probably get my head in the way and just slide it up. So it butts up as far as I can, up against the other bit of paper. And I do think that's quite nice, the contrast in the text. So if you've got access to a typewriter or a computer, or I've just got a little tablet that I can type on. So now I'm just going to, just the ones I can, for every other one, the ones I can flip, I'm just flipping and putting a bit of matte medium. There we go. And then the next one. So now I need to go over, under, over, under. I guess I didn't even need to tape this to the book to start with. You could tape it just to your desk if that's easier. Slide it up. So I'll just go on and finish doing that. Get it all woven and stuck, and then I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, so that's my little weaving all done, and I hope I was clear. I just stuck it where I could easily lift the flaps to stick, so it got stuck on all four sides, and then every other row it got stuck, You'll see when you do it where you can get the glue, but you see it holds together perfectly well. I'm going to get that extra bit off the top. I can probably just tear it with the masking tape and all, I hope. Probably should wait for the glue to dry, but that would require patience that apparently I don't have. And when you're weaving, really make sure that you butt each strip up against the previous strip, so that your page fits, so that otherwise you'll get to the bottom and you'll find that your last page won't fit, your last strip, won't fit. And that's why I got them the same size to start with, and I just made sure that I got them well squashed up, if that makes sense. So now I've got this thing, there I stuck out a bit, but that doesn't matter. And it's very interesting visually, I think. Words jump out and words kind of recombine, which is interesting as well. Like here I've got my friends and passion, but that's off the two different pages. So it's maybe nice to look at that as well if you do this. I'm just looking if there's anything else. Friend myself. World happy. Loved world happy. Yeah. Moments body. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I mean, it's up to you what you write. Like I said, that was just my thinking about weaving a cloak for myself. So the next thing I want to do, and I've also made sure when I was spacing out my handwritten and my typewritten that it was smaller than my page, because I want to have some kind of border around it and probably blur the fact that it's a rectangle a little bit and make it look more. I'm not going to turn it into a literal cloak, although you could if you wanted to, but just give it a more sort of rounded shape. But the first thing I'm going to do is matte medium it down to the page, and it's quite thick because I use quite thick paper. I'm going to matte medium the page simply because there are little holes. That's the back. I mean, the back's also cool. If you wanted to, rather than stick it down, you could bind it into your book as a page if you wanted to be able to see the back, but I'm going to stick it down. So I've drawn myself some little guidelines on the page. I'm going to use this because it's such thick paper. I'm going to use a good layer of this. The hair in my brush, probably a Fred hair. Can't blame Stella because she doesn't lose her hair, being a cockapoo. She does in fact need to go to the groomers fairly soon. Gets to the stage when you can't tell which end is which, except for the wagging tail. So I'm going to use a generous coat of matte medium. And yeah, and then on the facing page, and I mean, I want it to be a double page spread. But on the facing page, I don't think I'm going to integrate the two necessarily. The facing page, I've got some ideas for some words, and I'll see when I get there. I'm going to start with this. So I'm going to stick that on there, and I'm going to see how it sticks, as to whether I go on or whether I let it dry. So I'm keeping you with me, watching me gluing. Now, is that, if you could all tell me whether it was straight or not, I would not have to do this, but you can't, so I do. Yeah, I do think it would make sense, let's be sensible for once in our lives, to put some greaseproof over it, because there's glue on the top as well. I'm going to put a piece of greaseproof over it and put a heavy book on it and just maybe leave it for half an hour, go and have a cup of tea, and then I'll come back to you for the next bit. You won't have to wait at all, of course. You don't have to be patient, that's only me. See you in a bit. Okay, it's dryish. Have my cup of tea, put a heavy gardening encyclopedia on it, and I'm going to collage book page, I think, round the edge, because I just think it would be nice, and it sort of goes with my eco print, or yours might be different, you might want to introduce some colour, but just to keep it sort of paper and text, I'm kind of liking the idea of that contrast. So I've been in my scraps and got some bits of book page, and I'm gonna just stick them on. Where's my glue book? Wrong drawer, Catherine. Going to stick them on however they come, but try and break up the fact that it's rectangular. I just like the idea of it just being a bit more flowing, like a cloak in shape, if that makes any sense at all. And I'm also going to use the opportunity to cover up this black which came through from the other, you know, the previous oh, hang on. No, I'm not going to do that because that's that page sticking out. No, I don't want to do that. In fact, I'm going to put my bit of greaseproof under there. Otherwise, I'd have glued my lovely wolf moon together. I need to move that back over a bit then. And up a bit. Oh no, it's all going wrong. I'll put a bit more matte medium on. I'll put it on the actual page. It's probably easier to do that anyway. I did the handwriting, by the way, with a micron pen because I didn't know if I was going to put gesso or something over it as well. So just my ink is just, my printer's just a laser printer, so you know I can't do anything about that. But just, yeah, maybe it's worth thinking if you want to partially obscure it with something wet, a wet medium of some kind, that that you just bear that in mind. I'll put this here. I think I am going to, I've got this tape joining my pages together, so I think I am going to go over the page a little bit just to cover that brown tape. I mean, it's not that bad, it kind of tones with the you know, the colour of the eco print, but it will, where's my bone folder gone? Where's my nice bone folder? It will kind of unify the two a little bit if the border extends, if that makes sense. And a little bit for up there. I've buried all my scraps now under a bit of greaseproof. I've got a little gap there I need to fill. I don't know how far I'm going to come in, I'm just sort of playing it by ear really, as they say. I don't like hard edges in the middle of it. I've gone that too far. I'm just going to tear a sort of curvy shape. But yeah, the advantage of collage is you can always patchwork, can't you? That's the nature of it. That's the forgiving nature of it. Collage is great if you're feeling stuck or you're feeling out of your creative groove. Even if you're not a mixed media person, I think I've said it before. And just tear up some scrap paper and stick it down. I need a little tiny bit there. In fact, I think I need something over there as well. I keep saying it, I must play with my my tripod to see if I can get a side view for you so that I can get my head in but you can still see in from the side. Because I know you don't mind, you keep telling me you don't mind if my head comes in. Some of you even say you like to see my head, which is lovely. That gives me such a warm feeling, those of you that said that. Put the bit up there. So yeah, so I'm just going to do this really all the way around. I don't think you really need to watch me do that, unless I can think of something interesting to say at the same time. About cloaks maybe. Oh yes, there's a very interesting chapter in, I keep saying that's not interesting. There's a very interesting chapter in the Women Who Run with Wolves about, it's called the it's a page called she calls it Scapecoat, which is a project that she's done where she's asked women to create a cloak or a coat for themselves, and in it to put all the bad words that have been used. I mean, that's really deep processing right there. All the bad words that have been used against them in their lives, you know, the nasty words that, you know, I'm certainly not going to say the words, but the kind of words that some people use sometimes to describe women, which are not very nice by gross understatement. And the cathartic process of doing that, and through that letting the words go. And I think the idea was that the coat that you create is then destroyed, but what she reports is that women kind of became attached to their cloaks, although there's something negative in it. Anyway, she's far more eloquent than I am. I highly recommend that you read the book if you haven't yet. And there's another book I came across in my research, which is my posh way of saying Googling, basically. Well, Googling in my brain. I always start Googling in my brain to see if there's anything in there that's useful. Do you know what I mean? but then actual Googling, there's a book called The Queen's Cloak by Jean somebody, I can't remember her surname. I'll flash it on the screen now. I'll Google. And it tells the story, a fairy story, and I've tried to find the original fairy story, but I couldn't find it anywhere online. But it tells the fairy story of the Queen's Cloak. And I found, you know, if you go into Google Books or somewhere, you can kind of preview, you get to see a couple of pages of something. And I found, infuriatingly, a couple of pages of the story. It's coming in a bit far. But then it stopped, so now I have to buy the book. I've been trying to find it online. I must go and join my local library. I've not yet got around to doing that, to my great shame. And then see if I can get it there through interlibrary loan, because I can't find it second hand. I only find it new. Oh no, that's not true. I can find it second hand, but only in the States. But the story begins. I'm going to tell you the beginning of the story, and then when I finally get round to getting hold of the book, I'll tell you the rest of the story, but who knows when that'll be. So there's a queen, obviously, and one day she's bored, and she asks her maidservant to go up into the attic of the castle with her to do an inventory of everything within the castle. That's how bored she is. So bored that she's driven to do housework, basically. Can't imagine ever being that bored, but anyway. So they're up in the attic of the castle, and she comes across a trunk, and in the trunk is a cloak, the most beautiful cloak she's ever seen. It shimmers and it glitters and it's got a magical quality to it, and she's very taken with it. And she asks the maid about it, and the maid says, "Oh, that was your mother's cloak. It's a magic cloak." And the Queen puts the cloak on, but it doesn't feel right, and something about it when she puts it on, it no longer has the same beauty as when she's, you know, just sees it folded up. And she's absolutely becomes obsessed with this cloak and learning its secret. And so someone says to her, maybe it's the maid, I can't exactly remember, that there's a wise woman who lives in the woods, the Baba Yaga. That's the Baba Yaga. Those of you who've read Clarissa Pinkola or others will know about the Baba Yaga. And she will be able to tell the Queen the story of the cloak. So the Queen doesn't really like the sound of this because it involves effort. The Queen sounds a bit spoilt in this story. I don't know how she comes out of it in the end, but anyway, she insists that this wise woman is brought to her, to the castle, so that she can quiz her about the cloak. The wise woman, of course, refuses point blank to come to the castle. Good on her. So the Queen has to go into the woods and find the wise woman's cottage. And so she does that, and the wise woman comes to the door, and the Queen shows her the cloak and says, "I'm absolutely besotted with this cloak, but I can't work out its secrets. Can you help me?" And the wise woman says, "Oh yes, certainly I can. Yes, that cloak belonged to your mother. She created it herself. It took her a year. And it's only magic. It was only magic when your mother was wearing it. That's why it doesn't work for you." She says, "If you want such a cloak, you have to make your own." And the Queen wasn't very happy about this, and so she asked the wise woman for more information. The wise woman said, "You have to weave into it threads of every colour. You have to weave into it," and this really spoke to me, those of you who are following the comfort coverlet, you have to weave into it a piece of cloth from every person you've ever loved. And there are all kinds of other things she had to do. You know, it was a slow stitch process. And unfortunately, that's where the preview ran out, and I have no idea what happens next. But I'm wondering if, you know, as in most fairy stories, the Queen does learn her lesson in the end and weave her cloak. But yeah, so this book called The Queen's Cloak, and it's got a subtitle. I'll put the right author's name on the screen. Yeah, I definitely want to get hold of a copy. And probably you all do now as well. Unless you know. If you know, then tell us. Tell us in the comments if you know how the story ends up. But yeah, and I tried to Google, because it's a fairy story. It must be somewhere written outside of this book as a fairy story, but I couldn't find it. So let's go about there. And tear a bit of that off. But yes, I think you can probably imagine, certainly if you're here for the slow stitch as well, why I found that so interesting. The idea of weaving yourself a cloak, a magical cloak. Right, so anyway, now I've told you half a story and left you all hanging, as they say. I'm going to go and finish this border in this vaguely rounded style and let it dry, and then when that's all dry I'll come back and decide if I'm going to do any more to this page and talk about the words that I'm going to put on the facing page. So I'll see you in no time at all. Okay, I finished my collage, and as you can see I went over onto this eco print page and I just kind of made a frame so you can still see the leaf prints, and I am going to put some text here. I've got a poem. I found this, well, I didn't find him. I discovered this Irish poet who I have not heard of when I was looking for some words, and yeah, I found a lovely poem of his, so I'll share part of that with you later to put here. And looking here, I do like the combination of text, you know, my typed and handwritten and the book page, but I feel it's a bit lost. So I've got my trusty gesso here, and it's just white gesso, and I crumbled in a pinch of ground coffee, you know, instant coffee, which then dissolves, and it's just knocked the white back a bit. So I'm just going to paint some of that on the book page alone. Just, you know, roughly, maybe not covering everything. Should have my page behind, shouldn't I? Oh, I'm so naughty. It's just a question of if you mind if you get white gesso on your previous pages or your future pages or not. Apparently I do mind. I mind more on the previous pages really. On the future pages I don't mind because they're going to get worked over. That makes sense. So I'm just putting, you probably can't see because of my arm. Do I do it left-handed? I think you know how to paint stuff on. If you don't have gesso, then, you know, use what you've got. You could even use colouring pencils or whatever. But gesso is my go-to really. So you see, if you put it thin, then the text will still show through, but it just knocks it back. And I don't mind, and I might even on purpose go a little bit onto my weave, my woven section. If you sort of do it on purpose here and there, then if you do it by accident once, it doesn't matter. You see what I mean? So I'm going to go ahead and do this all around on my book page, and here on my book page as well, I think. Then I've got Stella, get down. Sorry, there's a bit of cat food left on the kitchen table and she's considering leaping up there to polish it off. What was I saying? Yeah, so I'll do that, and then I've got another idea, I think, further to embellish the border, the frame and the words. So once I've got the gesso on, I'm going to take Stella for a walk. It's not raining, but it's very grey and windy, while the gesso dries, and then I'll be back. But of course you won't have to wait for me to do that, because I shall pause and come back. Okay, my gesso is all dry. The other thing I thought to add a layer of text was my, you know, writing that doesn't say anything stamp. So I'm just doing with black, I think. Put that there so you can see. Just using little bits of it, and I don't want it to go on the middle section, so I'm just masking off with just this bit of scrap paper and trying to get it going in different directions. Just little bits of it, like so. Just, you know, not super perfect, just a bit random. Maybe a bit down there. Just get something to mask off both sides at once. It's quite difficult to do it across the gutter, but I'm going to do my best. Just do it like that. I just thought, you know, since all the text, it might be interesting as another layer. And then the final thing I've got is my words to stick on. A bit across there. You're supposed to use these, with a, you know, an acrylic block behind them, but I prefer to have it like this, just in my hand. Sorry if my head comes in. Just in my hand, then I can just choose little sections of it. I can bend it up out the way. Plus I haven't got an acrylic block, so there's that. This envelope, by the way, a friend gave me, it's got gold foil in. I want to play with that at one point. Real gold, look, I'll show you. Look. I'm not exactly, I'll have to look up how to use it. I think you're supposed to use glue and rub it on. And I think there's a special glue you're supposed to use, which I certainly won't have, but I'm just going to have a look and see if I can use it, you know, with one of the glues I do have. If you know, if you've used it with, you know, normal glue, then do let me know in the comments. But I'll just have a little experiment, but I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going around the edge a little bit, here and there, just another layer. But I'm really liking the, well, it's kind of multi-layered and complex in one way, but in another way, because it's all text of one kind or another, I think it's quite interesting to look at. So I hope you like it. A bit different to last week and the week before. Right, that'll do, I think. That'll do pig, and that's enough. Maybe a tiny bit there. Just like that, and maybe a tiny bit there. You say it's enough and then you find other little spots. Right, stop. Just stop now. So I've got my words ready to go. Just put the lid on that. Which are here. And I've printed with my little stampy letter stamps, weaving a cloak of protection. And I think I'll stick those on the woven section, and I'm going to be careful to strategically place them so they don't cover up, you know, interesting words like the word passion there, but here it just says same, and here it's illegible, so maybe I'll stick it there like that, a little bit higher perhaps, maybe there. I'll use my matte medium since it's here. Excuse my arm. So I'll stick those on, and then I'll share with you the little poem that I've picked. I went out actually in between doing the gesso this morning and now, which is the afternoon. I've been out and had lunch with my friend Pebble. It's one of my dearest friends. She was an actress back in the day. She's been on the telly, on the British telly. Excuse my head coming in, but you know I need to get it straight. And then she was a drama teacher, and we get quite animated. We went into a little cafe for lunch. We just had a, you know, panini and a salad, sort of halfway between. She lives about 45 minutes away, so we went somewhere halfway. Oh, Fred, he's just knocked my basket over. Can you not do that, please, Stella? Thank you. Yeah, so we met in a little cafe halfway between us, and we're quite. I haven't seen her for a while because she works full time, so you know it's quite difficult to find time. But it's half term this week. She works in a school. She's not a teacher anymore, but she works in a school. And so we had a coffee, and then we had our panini. I'm just seeing where I want to put this. Maybe higher. So we get quite animated because, you know, we always have a lot to catch up on. And it's one of those friends, I don't know if you have those friends, where we sort of feed off each other. We get a bit giddy. I haven't got enough glue on that now. Like they're now wrestling. So we're waving our arms about quite a bit, you know, as we're talking. And the waitress, the young woman that was a waitress, came over and said, "Yes, what would you like?" We weren't summoning them. Excuse me, stop, Stella. No barking. We weren't summoning her, we were just talking and waving our arms about. And I left Stella home alone. I've been gone for, I think, getting on for 3 hours, and she's been as good as gold, so that's good, because if you were here when I first moved here, you'll maybe remember me saying that she was very clingy and didn't even like me shutting the door if I went into the bathroom. But I've gradually built her up to being left by just leaving her when I go to the supermarket, which only takes like maybe an hour, things like that. So that's good now. She's been quite happy. There was no sign of stress or anything when I got home. I peeked through the window and she was just laying on the sofa. So that's good. There we go. So those are my words there. And now this is from the poem. I can't say the Gaelic word, I'm not even going to try, but the title is Blessing, but the Gaelic word for blessing. Breeder, maybe if you're watching you'll know what that is. But the poet is called John O'Donoghue, and the poem's beautiful. This is the last verse of it, which I've chosen because of the reference to cloak, and it goes, and so many a slow, no sorry, start again Catherine. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Which would have been lovely and romantic if it wasn't for the sounds of wrestling in the background. So I'm going to stick that in this little space where there's nothing much eco-print wise. And I've written that in my own handwriting because I just wanted it small, and I don't have small enough stamps. And I think it's nice as well, like I said, to have all the different ways of doing text within the one page. I'll put plenty on because it's that thick paper again. Excuse my head if it comes in. It will have to come in to get it somewhat straight. And I inked, of course, I inked the edges of everything. So I wrote that in black, and I stamped those words in brown so they show up against the black text. So there we go. So there's one more thing I want to do, and I'm going to ink all of the edges all the way around quite heavily. So I won't subject you to that whole process because that will take some time. I still have not done anything to my dobber, so it's still losing bits of foam. I've tried with the bit of velvet that I found, but it's just too bulky. I think I might just invest in a proper dobber like I see people using. I think they probably last a long time, you know, with the proper velvety end. I think I do enough inking to justify it. So I'll have a look for one of those. But I think what I want to do is, I think my the brown ink that I've got is that vintage photo, you know, that distress ink, and it's quite reddy brown. I think I'm going to get a bit of black on my dobber and then use brown so it's dark. That makes sense. See, and sort of do a combination of the two inks. So a bit of black, quite a lot of brown. Let's start up here. Yeah, so it's like that. So I'll go away and do that all the way around, and I'll come back and show you the finished page. Okay, so there we go, that's all my inking done. I went round with a little bit of black and the brown, as I said, and I'll just angle it up a bit, and you see it goes this kind of almost olivey green, which I just love. And then I went round on the very edge, just making sure to hit only the edge with the black. And I think it just frames it nicely. So I'll hold that up so you can sort of see that close, the woven section, and how the words sort of blend. And then there's the little last stanza of that poem. So that's my spread for this week. So I hope you like that and you'll have a go at it yourself, and I'll be interested to see if any of you come up with a different way of doing the words, or if you go with, you know, my idea of your inner resources and your outer support maybe. And thank you so much for watching as always, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more journaling tales. Bye bye.